Think of the people you interact with every day. Would you want to spend a day in a canoe with them? I'm Nathan Mercereau, and as a financial advisor with over 25 years of experience, I've learned that the quality of the people you spend time with is a lot more valuable than what can show up in a set of financial projections. And growing up in Canada, I discovered you can learn a lot about a person when you spend a day in a canoe with them. So I created this show where I interview people I find interesting and inspiring. I invite you to listen in and learn from their stories so you can create the life you want, one filled with wealth, wisdom, meaning, and purpose.
I'm delighted today to spend time in Day in a Canoe with Breck Kling, who is an art expert. Breck, welcome to Day in a Canoe. Excited to hear your story. If you wouldn't mind sharing with listeners, what is it that you focus on in your professional life?
So I'm an art advisor. I'm with Heather James Fine Art. I get to spend my days meeting with interesting people, which is the highlight for sure, and talking about a subject I love, which is art. So art for me is something that started in my life as an interest as a young child, with lucky to grow up with grandparents that had some wonderful art in their collection, which appealed to me, not about value, but about aesthetics. And that launched really ultimately what informed my education and where I am today.
Now, art as an investment has been something that has evolved over the years and even decades. How have you seen the interest in art take shape and evolve since you've been in your career?
So I was an entrepreneur first. I went to grad school for architecture, ended up not wanting to be an architect, but that education very much informed the way I look at the world in an incredibly meaningful way. And the part I gravitated to was the theory kind of art side. And so after graduate school, I had an opportunity to get into an interesting business I co-founded with someone. But simultaneously, I started collecting art. So I traveled the world looking at art. And for me, I always say that you quickly learn in art history that art is about context. And the reason why art is in our museums or in our canon of history is because it resonates with a moment in time. And so I wanted to look at art that was about our moment in time, helped me understand where we are with the visual narratives, because that's the narrative that works for me. It's the way my brain likes to process information.
And were there moments in time that you were drawn to as you were looking at this art, kind of either historical or current?
Emerging and contemporary artists, people making art today, that's where I went immediately. So our generation effectively, and that initially for me started. I had an interest in Japanese architecture. Well, I had an interest in Japanese culture that evolved into an interest in traditional Japanese architecture, then garden design, and then ultimately contemporary architecture and art. So I was collecting artists that might not resonate with you, or the names might not be recognizable, but like Takashi Murakami and Nara, and a series of artists like that, going back, I guess, nearly 20 years ago. And so that was kind of like my entree point, was kind of via that culture.
What is your observation how art has expanded from not only an interest, but from an investment standpoint too?
When Google launched their search engine, and then shortly thereafter they launched these alerts where you could track information online and get basically a curated list of places to go read on any topic that you're interested in. And so I around the time of that launch, which could have been probably around 2003, 4, or 5 or something, they launched that product. So I typed in art as investment was my search criteria. Every single article that was fed back to me, it was the art of investing in stocks, the art of dividend stocks, the art of real estate income investing. Nothing was about art as the fine art as an asset class at all. And so and that carried on for a number of years. Today, if I do it on that alert, it's very poignant articles about art as an investment. So from that perspective, there's been a complete shift in people's mindset. So art was this asset class that that very ultra wealthy people realized, and they were buying art, but it was a small group of people. Today, it's nearly all, like everybody, like thinks of art as a potential good investment at, I think, all walks of life. I always tell us, I always use the analogy that like all, well, not the analogy, but the story that I have all these friends that over the last 3 years since Masterworks Fine Art launched their investment product, everybody calls me because they're advertising on CNBC, and everyone's asking me questions like, have you seen this? And what I'm realizing, like in the end, what that means is there's just a hunger for people to understand art as an asset, as an investable asset class. So that's a radical change that I think you can feel it in almost every corner of our society. Whereas it was just this kind of quiet, small group. You could go to the first Art Basel in Miami, felt like it was filled with art collectors, people that had made a choice to get into that space and to buy art. Today, not only is it kind of a scene, but it's packed with people that are maybe just tangentially interested in art as an investment. So,
now you spend your time in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and Palm Beach, Florida, and deal with a lot of things in South Florida related to art. What prompts people to come to you, or when you're meeting them, what are the needs that they have, the problems that they want to solve? What are the conversations that you have with them?
In South Florida, the age of the population is people are more at the end of their or nearing the end of their art collecting career, not the early acquisition phase. So a lot of the conversation I'm having are more about selling artwork from collections. So kind of first and foremost is timing. Is this the right time? Is this an artist that's desirable right now? So helping people build context around how to make that decision is kind of the main conversation that we're having. Then it comes down to how are we handling this for them? What is that process going to look like? We want people, in the end, and the reason why I'm in this business is it's a relationship business. So we might be talking about art, but we're also getting to know each other. And I'm kind of always like eager to learn people's stories, everything from their career stories to their art collecting stories. So I gravitate towards those things. So we're talking about a lot of stuff when we get together, and it's about life, I guess. And art is a good conduit to having those conversations.
What you do in those conversations, I'm sure, is incredibly meaningful to people, because art is reflecting their interests, their passions, their value set. In the financial planning world, we are focused on a similar set of conversations, in the sense of we want to dial into our clients' values, what the purpose is for their future, their family, and how wealth and wealth succession can take place to be effective. Now, you have an interesting background in that you had a lot of great influences at an early age around values. You mentioned being introduced to art. Would you mind sharing some of the highlights of your growing up?
I was fortunate to be born into a family with a grandfather that had unbelievable success in his life. He founded Xerox. He took a family business that was a successful family business in Rochester, supplying a lot of
Rochester, New York.
Rochester, New York, yep. So supplying products and doing a big business with Kodak, Eastman Kodak, and that kind of thing in that community. He was a very smart business person, very well educated, had gone to Harvard Business School, had an opportunity to go to any company you wanted out of Harvard. And he chose to come back to Rochester, New York, because he's a community-minded person, and take over a family business and try to have a meaningful impact on Rochester, on that community, which he did. And and I always like to point out, he was kind of wildly successful. That doesn't happen very much, that kind of success. And Xerox grew at a rate on Wall Street that had never been seen before. and it never was seen again until Microsoft showed up. So it was one of those real technology stories that captured attention and changed the way technology changed the way we functioned in the modern office. Mm-hmm. So but what I always like to make sure to say is that it was a brilliant success, but he was also he was a good person. Like, he cared about community. He cared about Rochester. He made efforts to make education more available to people. He prided himself on, during the race riots, he personally drove downtown and met with kind of a leading reverend in Rochester, New York, and saying, I want to help, like, I want to be a part of the solution. And he created education programs, job training programs that existed for many, many years, getting people good, great jobs in their, whether it's factories or, sales jobs. And so that very much, and we are lucky to have a small family foundation where me and my aunts and uncles and cousins get to participate. And that, so that's connected us to the community at large. And it's just a gift to see all of the incredible things that people do to help others. And so, yeah, I hope I touched on it right. But that's a long...
No, that's a great overview. I remember you sharing a story of how some of the Xerox shareholders, or maybe even the board, was giving some feedback and questioning why your grandfather would give back so much to the community.
Exactly. No, he got a lot of flack. There were shareholder meetings with people screaming that Xerox was making donations to the community. And his view was like that we exist in these communities. We need to better these communities for the betterment of all of us. And so he didn't look at it as it had to be an exact, increase in profit that you could measure at that moment in time. He knew that, like, in the end, he was affecting the community at large, and that was the way that business people in his mind should be thinking, is that they should be solving problems across communities, not just in their narrow segment of their particular business, not narrow segment, particular business. So, and so in the end, like, the notion of corporate responsibility, he's very much on the forefront of that in this country. And there's a chair at Harvard Business School, for corporate responsibility in his name. So that's another thing that we're proud of for his legacy.
Oh, that's an incredible legacy.
Yeah.
And in a culture where individualism and, kind of the separation of community and corporation seems to evolve, what are practical ways that business leaders can have a more community awareness and community engagement?
I think that what he would say is that where business leaders have skills, they should be bringing those skills to the problems on the ground in a community. And so they should also be looking for those opportunities. And so what those are in any given community, I guess, is, someone has to kind of build the priorities of where they think they can affect change. But I think showing up with those skills is one of the things that is a core message from him. Like, bring those skills to bear on changing problems on the ground.
That's great insight. Now, another topic that you and I have shared ideas around is the topic of wealth succession within generations. And that's something that I'm passionate about. I know that you are really tuned into that. Just from your experience, what are some lessons learned around the generational wealth succession, not in the deep financial statements, but really in the conversations and the mindsets, the collaborative approach, the challenges or opportunities within families? Like, what has been your insight and takeaway that you would pass on?
So the context that I definitely have deep experience in that question, or that is around family foundations, and then at multiple generations. So as these foundations evolve, how to make decisions, that are effective. And those decisions aren't just necessarily about how you are impacting a community or a donor base, it's also how do you function as a family, because you want to be, like, in the end, there can be incredible tension. There's not always agreement. So you're learning to function as like an entity, as an organization, so shared vision, finding where people are, where we orient together, or how do we guide our decisions together, is something that if it doesn't happen, it's very contentious. So that kind of leadership is critical to how to navigate an organization like that. But the individual needs to be represented for that to happen. So how does the individual engage in those conversations? Any single multifamily dynamics, there's generational assumptions and needs and wants, and then and there's practical needs that have to get solved, and there's individuals trying to find their way. And I'll make this one last point. There tends to be, in the case of generational wealth, and there tends to be a deference to
the matriarch.
The matriarch,
yeah.
Whoever found was kind of who had
wealth creators.
Yeah, the wealth creator who created those opportunities that we're all lucky enough to be part of. But I think that understanding those original intentions are critically important, but then finding the current generation's needs, wants, desires, and trajectory is also equally important. But there is this kind of knee-jerk to just be deferential to what that person or those individuals were doing, wanted, but that doesn't really fit what's happening today.
Right. We talk about how wealth creators unintentionally cast a shadow in successive generations, and successive generations live under that shadow. And from our point of view, it's important that the successive generations, the individuals, have their own voice, have their own personal financial plan, have their own clarity about what the future holds, so that they're not just sitting under this giant shadow and responding to expectations that they necessarily haven't created.
Absolutely agree with you. I think that I can't imagine that there's a wealth creator in a family in this world that doesn't want to see future generations thriving versus acting or existing based on their previous decisions. They want you to find your way, right? And to then flourish. I mean, that's the opportunity we all have.
Absolutely. So in closing, I'll ask a reflective question. If looking back at your career, what advice would you give a young Breck? Knowing what you know now and having all those world experiences, what are things that, what's the one thing that you would say, young Breck, pay attention to this? I think it's a good one to cover.
I would tell him to actually be honest and reflective on what his strengths are and embrace those things, but then also be cognizant enough to not kind of lose your way, also find a way to calibrate. And I'm trying to think of how to make this make more sense.
To have sure footing about it.
Yeah, to have sure footing, but then also I think always maintaining a little bit of a practical view. And so what I mean by that is a planning view, always paying attention to every moment that we're existing, and every whether it's this year, whatever I do this year, I should be thinking about where that fits in my overall plan. So what does that mean financially? What is is there contributions I can be making to my future savings? Is there so being incremental about the big picture, but then trying to really let it rip and be who you are in the moment, so to speak, embracing that. And the reason why I say that is that I had a wildly successful business, and me and my partner today always joke that, and I would say that I'm a very, I think one of the greatest parts about humanity is the ability to think abstractly about the world and solve problems and to be creative. So I can fall in love with ideas. And so I could be a little bit careless in how I would be willing to fall in love with a new idea and invest in that. And and I wish that I could go back. And my former partner and I used to always joke, it's like, wow, like if we had just taken like this little bit of money when we had this wild, amount of cash flow in this business, and just started buying, like investing in some projects like self-storage, or, like it would have created it would created like a stability that would have still allowed for all the creativity I desired and all the projects I wanted to be engaged in. But instead I was all one, not enough of the other sometimes, So that would be my advice. So plan along the way, because planning it's worth it, and it adds up, and it in the end provides opportunity.
I think that's great insight, and it's spoken out of experience, and the school of life is the best teacher.
Life, yeah.
So thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing your insights. It's been a pleasure getting to know you, and look forward to continued conversations in the future.
Yeah, thank you, Nathan.
Thank you for listening and tuning in to Day in a Canoe. We're thrilled to have you as part of our community. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and share it with your friends and loved ones. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel or follow us on social media platforms by searching Day in a Canoe. We'll see you next time.